I'll go first and we'll move to the left. I'm Eric Peterson.
Gary Israel.
Vance Garwood.
David Foley.
Thank you, gentlemen. So we'll move on to agenda item 3.1, the approval of the minutes from the June 20th, 2023 meeting. Either some conversation or I'll look for a motion to approve them as written.
I, Vance Garwood, make a motion to approve the minutes from the June 2023 meeting of the Andover Planning Commission and Board of Zoning and Appeals.
Thank you, Vance. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion. Gary Israel.
Thank you, Gary. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 4, communications, potential residential development report. Is that you, Les?
Sure.
Okay.
We've had quite an uptick in the number of single-family permits that we've issued since the Cornerstone Cottages edition opened up and the Heritage second phase of the higher density single-family, as well as the Prairie Creek edition sixth phase. So what started out to be kind of a slow year is now considerably higher than average,
Good
which
deal.
is kind of good to hear.
That is. Anything for Les or Justin on that? All right. We'll move on to the meat of the agenda. 5.1 is the agenda item is the preliminary and the final plats of 1306 East 13th Street. Justin, is that you?
Yes, sir. The subject property is generally located at 1306 East 13th Street. This is the first of 2 agenda items for this property that you'll be seeing tonight. But this particular agenda item, they will be getting a preliminary and final plat. The property is located just along the Redwood Trail, just east of 13th Street Sports Park. It's a single parcel, currently vacant, less than 1 acre. The property was rezoned back in February of 2023 from the A1 Agricultural Transition District to the SF2 Single Family Medium Density District with a special use to allow for an event venue. You all may remember that. Water and sewer service for the subject property will be served by the city of Andover, and the property will receive access along East 13th Street. The preliminary and final plats were reviewed by the subdivision committee last week at their July 11th meeting, and the preliminary and final plats were recommended for approval at that meeting. The condition on that approval was that the applicant provide a drainage plan, which has since been provided by the applicant. That drainage plan has been reviewed by the city engineer, and there were no concerns by the city engineer on that plan. As well as a comment on access control along East 13th Street. There was some discussion about whether or not there should be 1 or 2 access points along East 13th Street. We did receive clarification from our engineer that there should be 1 access point on East 13th Street. So the final plat depicted here will need to have some additional language added just right here on the plat that says 1 point of access control, with the exception of 1 point of access. Other than that, there were no staff concerns. It has been thoroughly reviewed, and I'm open for any questions that you may have.
Would any motion need to include the thing you said about the access change?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly correct, Mr. Chairperson. Any motion to approve this evening would be conditioned upon adding access control language permitting 1 opening.
Okay.
We discussed this at length. I think it was the only item on subdivision last week. So we discussed it at length then, and then back in January, February as well. So as a reminder, I think it came to planning commission back then, right? It was the event venue, the lady that came and.
It
Right.
did. You all
Overnight
made
Yep,
a
overnight, yep, right.
recommendation for approval to the city council.
It's on that kind of triangle shaped area right next to 13th Street Park where the carnival used to be.
Yeah, by the trail and.
Right.
Yeah. Good. Any other questions for staff on this one? All right. Let's see. Is the applicant here? Okay. Then if we don't have any further discussion, I'll take a motion on this particular one.
Mr. Chairperson, I, Gary Israel, make a motion to approve with the condition of adding access control language to the plat. for the property generally located at 1306 East 13th Street, just east of the 13th Street Sports Park.
Thank you, Gary. I, Eric Peterson, will second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5.1 carries.
Mr. Chairperson, I, Gary Israel, will make a motion to recess the Planning Commission and convene the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Thank you, Gary. Do we have a second to that?
Second by Vance Garwood.
Thanks, Vance. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we will now convene the Board of Zoning Appeals. And I will call agenda item 5.2, which is a public hearing on case number BZA-V23-0009. We would like to welcome everyone interested in this hearing and lay out a few ground rules. It is important that you present any facts or views that you have as evidence at this hearing so that findings can be made for the decision of this board. In order to grant a variance, 5 specific written findings of fact must all be met according to the state statutes and the city zoning regulations. This board is authorized by state statutes to make a decision appealable only to district court and not to the governing body. After our zoning administrator provides us with some information, I will call upon the applicant, and then we will hear from other interested parties. Once all have been heard, the applicant will have an opportunity for final comments. The board will close the hearing to further public comments and will then consider their decision, during which time they may direct questions to the applicant, the public, or staff. You should be aware that the board can require such conditions to be attached to the premises benefited by the variance as may be necessary to comply with the standards set out in Article 11.106. These are to reduce any potentially injurious effect of such variance upon other property in the neighborhood and to carry out the general purpose and intent of these regulations. Failure to comply with any of the conditions attached to a zoning permit for a variance shall constitute a violation of the regulations. You should also be fully aware that if the applicant chooses to describe various features of their development plans, the city can only enforce those provisions which are covered in zoning and other city codes. Anyone wishing to speak must be recognized by the chairperson and give their name and address. Please use the podium and speak clearly so that your comments can be recorded for inclusion into our minutes. Before we proceed with the hearing, I'll ask the commission members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they or a relative own property in the area of notification or have conflicts of interest.
No.
Hearing none, we'll move to notification. Official notice for this hearing was published on the City of Andover Municipal website on June 24th, 2023, and notices were mailed to the applicant and 6 real property owners of record in the area of notification on June 26th, 2023. The record shows that at least 20 days have elapsed between the publication and mailing dates and the hearing date. Unless there is evidence to the contrary from anyone present, I will declare that proper notification has been given. Although we do not encourage such communications, I will ask the board if any of them have received any ex parte verbal or written communications prior to this hearing which they would like to share.
None.
None.
Hearing none, I will now call on the city's zoning administrator to provide us with a report on this case.
The subject property in this case is the same property that you just approved the platting. You'll remember from that plat that this is a very unusually shaped lot. It's a wide and very shallow triangle that not only has an unusual shape, but it also has a large 100-foot wide natural gas pipeline that bisects the property. Those 2 unique effects on the property leave a very small building envelope. And in this case, the applicant is asking for some relief on the setbacks to allow the building to be built a little closer to the rear of the property. And remember, the rear of the property is the Redbud Trail. So there's also a right of way there. I believe the Redbud Trail is also a 100-foot right of way. So notwithstanding all those conditions, there is plenty of open space and separation from the neighbors around this subject property, and staff has has no objection to the variance as it was applied for.
Thank you, Les. I assume the applicant's still not here, but I needed to ask. So are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this case? Okay. Have any written communications been received, guys?
No, sir.
None. Okay. So hearing no further public comments, I will hereby close the public portion of the hearing. There will be no further public comments unless the board wishes to ask questions to clarify information. The board will now deliberate the request to determine whether the evidence presented supports the conclusions of the required findings of fact. The board will now consider the criteria provided for evaluation.
I can do
You
that.
want it? Okay,
I can do
thanks.
it. Does the evidence demonstrate that, one, the physical surroundings, shape, or topography of the property would result in a practical difficulty as it's distinguished from a mere inconvenience for the owner, lessee, or occupant, staff? The subject property is a triangular shaped parcel with wide frontage, limited depth, and a large pipeline easement that limit the buildable space.
Concur.
Two, granting the variance will result in material detriment or injury to other property or improvements in the neighborhood. Staff, the detriment and or injury to other property or improvements is anticipated. No detriment and or injury to other property or improvements is anticipated.
Concur.
Granting the variance will result in inadequate supply of light or air to adjacent property, substantially increased traffic congestion, increased fire risk, or substantially diminished property values in the neighborhood. Staff, the subject property is surrounded by public uses. City Park, Redbud Trail, 13th Street Park, which 13th Street on the south, which will provide separation from adjacent residential properties. Staff does not anticipate adverse effects in the neighborhood.
Concur.
Four, the request for a variance is not based exclusively on the desire of the owner, lessee, occupant, or applicant to make more money out of the property. Staff, the effect of the required building setbacks and pipeline easement are multiplied by the unusual shape of the parcel. The applicant is not seeking an increase in the allowable lot coverage. The net lot area of the parcel is approximately 23,000 square feet, but the buildable area is less than 5,000 square feet, plus or minus 22%, even with the requested variance.
Concur.
Specific conditions to be met. One, the requested variance arises from a condition unique to the property in question, which is not ordinarily found in the same zoning district, and which was not created by any action of the property owner or the applicant. Staff, the subject property is a triangular shaped parcel with a wide frontage, limited depth, and a large pipeline easement that limit the buildable space.
Concur?
Concur.
Two, strict application of the provisions of these zoning regulations would result in unnecessary hardship for the owner, lessee, or occupant of the land or structures. Staff, the effect of the required building setbacks and pipeline easement are multiplied by the unusual shape of the parcel. The applicant is not seeking an increase in the allowable lot coverage. The net lot area of the parcel is plus or minus 23,000 square feet, but the buildable area is less than 5,000 square feet, plus or minus 22%, even with the requested variance.
Concur.
Three, granting the variance will not adversely affect the rights of the adjacent property owners or residents. Staff, the subject property is surrounded by public uses, City Park, Redbud Trail, and 13th Street, which provides separation from adjacent residential properties. Staff does not anticipate adverse effects in the neighborhood.
Concur.
Concur.
Four, the requested variance will not adversely affect public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare. Staff, the subject property is surrounded by public uses, City Park, Redbud Trail, the 13th Street, which will provide separation from adjacent residential properties. Staff does not anticipate adverse effects in the neighborhood.
Concur.
Five, the requested variance will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of these zoning regulations. Staff, the intent of required building setbacks is to provide open space separation from adjacent properties. Subject property is surrounded by public uses, City Park, Redbud Trail, and 13th Street, which provide separation from adjacent residential properties.
Concur?
Concur.
Thank you, Vance, for that. Okay. Hearing that, is there a motion to either approve, modify and approve, disapprove, or to table the discussion?
Mr. Chairperson, after having considered the evidence at the hearing and determining that the findings of fact have been found to exist that support all 5 conditions set out in subsection 11-106.b2 of the zoning regulations and KSA 12-759E, I, Gary Israel, move that the chairperson be authorized to sign a resolution granting the variance for case number BZA-V22-0009 as requested.
Thank you, Gary. Do we have a second to that motion?
I, David Foley, second the motion.
Thank you, David. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. A resolution will be prepared and made available to the applicant as soon as reasonably possible, but no later than 45 days from the date of this hearing. If anyone is aggrieved by this decision, a further appeal can be made to the district court to determine its reasonableness within 30 days after the resolution is signed and filed with the zoning administrator.
Mr. Chairperson, I, Gary Israel, make a motion to adjourn the Board of Zoning Appeals and reconvene the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Gary. I, Eric Peterson, will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We will now reconvene the Planning Commission with item number 5.3, the annexation of the Penner property. Guys?
The subject property in this petition is plus or minus 150 acres at the southeast corner of Andover Road and Southwest 60th Street. I see Vance looking at that aerial photo. It's a little unusual that it's a large tract and it's growing corn today, but it was platted many years ago. So you see streets with names, and there are actually lots and blocks that were never developed. So it sat there for 40 some years in that condition. The contractual buyer of the property desires to annex it, and he intends to develop a residential neighborhood there. The property is within the service area of Rural Water District number 5. It's adjacent to Andover Sewer. We've discussed that to some detail, but haven't gotten down into exact routes and so forth. But the extension of public services are something that's reasonable, and we look forward to working with this developer to come to that end.
Thank you, Les. Any questions for Les? Is the applicant here?
Not the applicant, but I'm here on behalf of the buyer.
Yeah, no, please. Is there anything you'd like to add or to what he has said?
Not that bad. Not,
Please come to the podium if you would. Thank you very much. Just name and address and then it's all yours.
Joel Morris, 818 West Willow, in Andover here. Nothing to really add. I had a couple booklets and brochures of kind of the ideas and concepts we're looking at. It is the more kind of out of the box thinking. It brings back more green space to neighborhoods and more interactive, more neighborhood just involvement, and something it's been very successful in other communities, and within the proximity to the school and everything. I think it's a fantastic fit for it, and truly it's something Andover, I think it will blend more to this in the future and see. I mean, I think it's going to be a good deal. So.
Any questions for Joel?
No.
Thanks,
All
Joel.
right. Sir, thank you. Appreciate it. Any further discussion? And let's see.
Well, like Joel said, our strategic planning that we just went through called for more residential housing units, and this would definitely provide that. So, yeah, I'm definitely glad to see it.
Great. Well, then we'll entertain a motion for approval of this.
I, Vance Garwood, make a motion that we approve the annexation of the Penner property to the governing body.
And I, Gary Israel, second the motion.
Thank you both. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. 5.3. We will move on to item 5.4, activate Andover Comprehensive Plan 2024 through 2033. I will now open the public hearing and I'll ask staff to take it from there.
I'm happy to take this one, Mr. Chairperson. The City of Andover Comprehensive Plan defines the general location, character, extent, and relationship of future land uses within the city and the greater planning area. The plan promotes the desired land use and addresses growth framework related to transportation, infrastructure, housing diversity, urban design. In addition to being a requirement by the Kansas state statute, the plan is one of the most important guiding documents that the city utilizes. This is something that is always consulted by staff whenever we are making a land use decision or any decision pertaining to zoning or future land use. The city signed an agreement with the Olson Studio back in March 2022 to develop the comprehensive plan with significant input from our citizens, advisory boards, staff, and elected officials, with the primary focus on public participation. The project kicked off in July of 2022 with the first of 2 joint City Council and Planning Commission workshops, of which several of you were in attendance at those meetings. We launched an extensive public outreach campaign that included a public survey, demographic-specific meeting events targeting the development community, including Andover youth, and a half-day visioning workshop, a multi-day citywide planning charrette, and a virtual public open house. We took a draft plan of the comprehensive plan and we published it on the activateandover.com website, where it was available and open for public comment from March 8th through March 22nd. The Olson Studio presented key findings of the comprehensive plan to the City Council and Planning Commission at the second of the 2 joint workshop meetings in March of 2023. The role of the Planning Commission tonight is to adopt the comprehensive plan and recommend approval to the governing body. So you'll be essentially creating a resolution to adopt that. The resolution will be signed, and hopefully the City Council will have final approval on that. Before I turn it over to Taylor Plummer of the Olson Studio, she's joining us virtually this evening. Do you have any discussion or comments or questions of staff regarding how we got to this point this evening?
I would say to the other commission members, Gary and I were on the a part of the process, I guess. And so we attended several meetings last year, of which Taylor was there multiple times. And it seemed like a very comprehensive process, and there were lots of people involved. If you look at one of the first pages, it shows the name of all the people, including the stakeholders that were involved, and there was a lot of input.
It sure appeared so. I read a fair amount of it. Yeah, it appeared to be very, very comprehensive. So thank you. Well, I'll let you introduce Taylor if you would.
Sure. Taylor Plummer is with the Olson Studio. She's been with us from the get-go, from back when we started this last March. We've worked with Taylor and her team in multiple events throughout the course of the plan. We've worked with several sub-consultants that have helped us with public outreach of this plan. Taylor will be kind of running through the contents of the plan a little bit tonight, go through the vision and values and the strategies that were discussed as part of this plan. I don't want to steal too much of her thunder, so Taylor, I'll let you take it away. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me know if I need to do something different. Thanks for letting me join you virtually this evening. Again, let me know if you can't see something well or if my audio is off. But I'd like to share my screen here. Please let me know when you can see that.
We can.
Okay, great. So, as Justin said, he gave a great overview of the comp plan, what its purpose is, why we did this in the first place. But the comp plan for Andover is on a 10-year time frame, as you're very familiar with. You go through this process as regularly as 10 years seems. But the whole point of that is to look at the long-term development and land use and transportation future of the community. So like Justin said, we did a lot of public engagement and stakeholder engagement throughout this process. So the whole point being trying to understand what the public wants, what your stakeholders want to see, and then what's actually feasible. So we conducted an economic and market analysis as well. Stakeholder engagement, and Justin again touched on this, very high level. We did assemble that stakeholder group. Many of you were a part of that or engaged with these events. We had the visioning workshop, the citywide planning charrette, the business and development community and youth community meetings, as well as a final draft plan review meeting with that stakeholder group that was virtual. On the public side, we hosted 2 pop-up events, one at National Night Out and the Fire and Police Cookout, as well as a 2-day pop-up at Greater Andover Days. Our sub-consultant, Jane, with Venice Communications, staffed both of those and had a great time just conversing with the public at those events. Also had the virtual public open house open for just short of a month there back in fall of 2022. And then Justin mentioned the online review of the draft plan as well. So I don't want to go through every single nitty-gritty detail of the plan, but please let me know if you do have questions. I'm happy to go into more detail. The plan itself is broken into 6 different sections. The first 2 are really stage setting. Section 1 is just setting the stage for the plan, the purpose, talking about the state statutes that are in place that allow communities to do this sort of effort. A little bit of the history of comprehensive planning, a bunch of good stuff there. Section 2 is focused on the vision and the values, as well as the goals and the strategies. I'm not going to go through all of the goals and strategies tonight. There's a lot of content there, but I would encourage you all to spend time with that content. I'll give you the general framework of those though. And then sections 3 through 5 are where we actually have map-based recommendations. They're more spatial in nature. So things like your actual future land use on each parcel within the community, transportation improvements, aesthetic improvements. And then lastly is the implementation section, section 6. So that's looking at specific action items to actually carry forward the recommendations as previously stated in the plan. So the plan structure follows this nifty little pyramid here, starting with the vision on the top. You all know what a vision statement is, that aspirational statement. It's supposed to be high level, but aspirational at the same time. So I'll present that here in a second. We break down the vision then into 6 different values. So other plans sometimes call them guiding principles or core values, just different terminology, generally the same thing. But that's starting to break down the vision into more bite-sized pieces. And then from there, goals and strategies do the same thing. Goals are more of the what, where strategies are more of the how. And then those implementation actions get even more granular than that, looking at who is responsible for what task, what the timeline is, that sort of thing. So the vision statement, based on all of the public and stakeholder engagement we completed, is Andover aspires to be a complete community that welcomes all people, supports a diverse economy, encourages fun and vibrancy, and integrates the natural environment. The values, like I said, there are 6, and they're starting to get a little bit more topic-based, as you'll see. Robust neighborhoods and attainable housing, connected networks and efficient transportation, vibrant lifestyles and distinctive identity. That was a point we heard a lot about, wanting to make sure Andover stands out within the region. Sustainable design and environmental stewardship, effective government and public participation, and growing economy and widespread opportunity. So then each of those values are broken down into different goals and strategies. So again, goals are more of the what, where strategies are more of the how. So those are broken up into different topics or different subsections, excuse me, within section 2 of the plan. So I wanted to spend most of my time focused on the more spatial recommendations, the first one being land use and growth. So something different with this comprehensive plan compared to your previous comprehensive plan is the structure in which we planned for future land use. It's a little bit more comprehensive. I like to think of a way to plan for land use because it's looking at the land uses specifically still, that remains the same, but also looks at some of the character and the amenities that would go along with those land uses. So we identified 12 different place types within the city. That's what we're calling them. Place types are a growing, don't want to say trend, but a growing way to plan for land use that, like I said, is more comprehensive and takes a more broad look at the development of a community. And what it takes to actually generate great places within your community. So, like I said, we've got 12 of these. I didn't want to run through all of them. I've just got a sampling of a few here to just give you a taste of those. One example is neighborhood corridor. So within your new plan, you've got these 3D graphics. They are not meant to be an exact duplication of what you should look for in each development. They are truly just precedent examples to give you an illustration. But there are some key elements in each that you should be able to pick out. We've done that by including a list of typical land uses and amenities that you should expect and look for within these places. And we've got those bulleted out for each place type. So there's about a 2 to 3 page spread on each place type within the plan itself. So this is a very shrunk down version of the content there, but should give a good understanding and a complete understanding of what those different places are. So you'll see some differences in scale in some of these place types. So this one, for example, is neighborhood corridor, where the next one, perhaps up in scale, maybe you could think a little bit higher density, would be city corridor. So very similar in the fact that it's both along an arterial road or just a main thoroughfare through the community, more so a linear development, but slightly higher density, a little bit more intense of uses there, perhaps drawing more people from a greater area. Another example of that is neighborhood center versus city center. So you'll see the differences in those when you go to look at the plan. Again, density, the area of people that this place is drawing from. The city center is going to draw more people and serve more people than your neighborhood center would. Neighborhood center would be much more focused on the surrounding neighborhood and serving and meeting their needs. And then one more is mixed residential. There is a traditional residential neighborhood place type as well, but I just wanted to show this one because this was something we did hear a lot about, was just housing and the need for different types of housing to serve needs, but also just the growing and changing trends in the market and just different consumer preferences. So we wanted to make sure that you were equipped with a place type that met that need. So you'll see here the variety of housing types, essentially all mixed together in one, but the intent would still be that they're complementary. And that is described within the plan itself, within the character description. So there's a lot of language that can safeguard you within the plan itself. And then for the map itself, this is what puts the place types on every single parcel within the community. as well as assigning some place types for the proposed growth area. It's probably hard to see on your screen there, but there is a black dashed line that's in between the current city boundary and the Andover planning area / extraterritorial jurisdiction area, where we've tried to identify where are those primary areas for growth. So that's why we have that proposed growth area. And that's why we also placed or put place types, assigned place types to that area as well. Before I move on to transportation, are there any questions, or Justin or Les, do you need me to go into any greater detail?
No, I have no questions.
No further detail currently, Taylor. Keep rolling. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Just want to make sure. All right. The next major section of the plan is called Activated Connections, Mobility and Connectivity Framework. Really, to put it even more simply than that, it's just focus on transportation for all modes of travel. So this map is kind of not a catch-all, I should come up with a better word than that, but a conglomerate of recommendations. So obviously transportation and your transportation network is a huge, important piece of your community and community development and supporting development and even guiding development where you want it to go. And then on the multimodal side, that's something we heard a lot about during the planning process, is just wanting to make sure that there were great pedestrian and bicycle amenities in place throughout the community, and that there was a network in place for that sort of travel. So I believe it was adopted last year, maybe 2 years ago now, your new Parks and Recreation playbook. That had some recommendations within that plan itself for some shared use paths and for some future pedestrian connections. Some of those sort of recommendations, we just wanted to make sure were incorporated into this comprehensive plan. So you'll see a note, a little star by some of those legend items that says it's a recommendation straight from that playbook. So very important that your comprehensive plan is supporting your other plan documents that you have in place. So we wanted to make sure that those spoke well and played well together. One key thing I wanted to point out, again, probably at this scale, it's hard for you to see, but we did recommend some new roadway connections. One being the north-south connection that generally aligns with Mulberry. A little bit of a jog there, but generally aligns with Mulberry, as well as some east-west connections, one being along Woodstone, and then the continuation of Yorktown up to the north, up to 13th Street. So you will see some ways to further connect your transportation system, both for vehicles, and then oftentimes we proposed either an extension of a 10-foot or an 8-foot shared use path along that roadway extension. So you'll see those kind of go hand in hand. This plan also supports the upcoming US 54-400 expansion and shows those planned backage roads. So you'll see those kind of parallel to Kellogg there, as well as the proposed 10-foot shared use paths on those as well. So you'll see if you track some of these different shared use paths, as well as the proposed pedestrian connections, which the Parks and Rec playbook wasn't entirely set on exactly what sort of infrastructure would be in place for those, just the intent that there would be some sort of safe pedestrian travel way there. But if you look at the networks of all of those, you'll see that there are some internal loops that are really important to that sort of travel, to give people both different ways to get to different places, more for commuter reasons, but also for recreational reasons. Any questions on transportation?
No.
No.
Okay. The last main section is activated character, aesthetics, and streetscape. So all about how the community looks and making a great impression to both your residents that live there to make sure that there continues to be this strong pride in their community, but also to visitors coming to visit Andover, and perhaps this is their first experience driving into the community. So this map identified some primary streetscaping corridors, primarily along your main roadway there, Andover, as well as 21st. That seems to be a growing corridor. Also identified primary and secondary gateways. So gateways, you're probably very familiar, but they are typically monumentation of some sort of signage that looks nice, that is repeated in style, or at least similar in style throughout the entire community, to give that sense of cohesiveness. So I know Andover does have a handful of gateway signs already, or monuments in place already. There is a discrepancy in style between some of them. So I think there is a need there for some sort of consistency. Primary and secondary gateways, really just a difference in scale. So secondary gateways might more so be maybe just a column feature of some sort, where a primary gateway could be a full monument sign. Those can be interpreted in different ways, but that is the intent there. And then we've also got on here primary intersection enhancements and proposed secondary intersection enhancements. The intent behind identifying those, one, is to align with the Parks and Rec playbook that identified some key crossing points for pedestrians, largely for safety reasons. So we're mimicking those placements within this, but also identifying that there could just be some overall aesthetic enhancements to these intersections that can be actually implemented in multiple different ways, whether that's just simple enhancements, some redoing of the curb, sidewalks, that sort of thing, or actually installing some nice landscaping or some different pavement types as accents. That can be further interpreted. We just wanted to identify those specific locations that the public and the stakeholders helped us identify, and also collaborated with the Parks and Rec playbook. We also show the proposed roadway connections on here in that faint yellow line with the white dashing on top. Those reflect what's shown on the mobility and connectivity framework. So same thing there. Excuse me, we just wanted to make sure that was reflected in both places. That is the high level overview that I have for you. Again, I'm happy to go into additional detail if any commissioners would like that, or Justin or Les or Lance. I saw Lance in the background as well. Just let me know. But that is what I had for you all. I'm happy to take any questions.
Taylor, thank you very much. I don't have a question. I just wanted to say I happened to be on a plane Sunday, so I had a few hours to kill and had a chance to read through a good chunk of it, and really impressive and obviously well thought out, and yeah, no questions I would bring to the table. I'll ask any other commissioners if they have anything.
The only thing I'd ask, is there anybody from the public that has any questions?
Yeah.
Bill?
Could you explain the city center piece a little bit more? Like, I noticed one that's going to be at 21st and Prairie Creek on that northeast corner, I think, which seemed like a weird place for a city center.
City Center. Which location are you talking about? You said 21st?
21st
here?
and Prairie Creek, I think.
Okay. That must be it. Because you're talking about City Center, the red right here.
Yeah.
That is at 21st and Andover. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, no, I thought there was one farther out at Prairie Creek.
I think what you're thinking about is in a previous version. I believe when the virtual open house was live, that was on the table then, but we heard some feedback to revert that didn't feel comfortable there and make sense there. So that hasn't changed.
Okay. So what is a city center? Is it a neighborhood with stores? What?
Yes, it would largely be, I think I had that in here. Yes. So typical land uses are probably going to lean fairly heavily on the commercial side, but also on the mixed use side, which would be a blend of commercial, office, and residential. Residential would look more like multifamily residential typically in that sort of setting. But that the intent of city center is to be mixed use in nature. So that's why this typical land use and amenities list is fairly long in comparison to some of the other place types. But there's a lot that could happen because it is more of that multi-story, denser development style.
Okay, that makes sense. It actually takes care of my main question. It sounds like that's been taken off the table anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Anything else?
There's almost 400 pages, I think. So there's a lot of info,
There is.
more than anybody has time to read at any one point. But like I said, when Gary and I were taking part of the meetings, the plan seems to reflect very well what we heard from people that were partaking in the process. I don't know what lesson Lance and Justin would think, but that's was my take.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I would say it was an incredibly positive experience. The public input that we received was incredible in terms of the development of this plan and the feedback that we received from residents. We had a technical committee made up of staff, but then we also had a stakeholder group made up of some elected officials and some members of the planning commission, and then business leaders, members of the community that, residents, members of local groups that participated in several meetings to get us to the point where we are today. So overall, that was really a tremendous experience. It's something that we only really get to do once every 10 years. So it's an extremely important document that will be used regularly. And then your role as planning commissioners will be to revisit this document on an annual basis to make sure that it's still working for us. So that's something to look forward to. We will continue to look at this document and make sure that growth in Andover is going according to plan.
I think one of the most important things that I took out of this was the place type framework plan and that map. I think it'll really help the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals to help to develop Andover in a uniform and concise manner so that we're just not putting things wherever people, well, I want a development up over here, but we don't have infrastructure. We don't have anything else available to them. Building clusters, little city centers. I think those are all important. I would love to see a large scale map of that so that we have it available to us whenever we do meet and people come with proposals on things that we can look at it and say, well, that doesn't quite fit right there for the city of Andover in the direction we're trying to go right now. But it needs to be a little bit fluid, because times change and things happen. I never imagined that Andover would have at one point more duplex permits than single family permits. That happened for a while, but I think Andover needs to have a lot of different opportunities for everyone.
And that's a great point about the map, Gary. We will be developing that future land use place type map internally, and that will be available to the public. Again, that's something that staff will be utilized. You will be seeing it in future reports. We'll be able to zoom in on each property individually or each area individually to make land use decisions.
That'll be really helpful. I agree. You guys often will tell us this is where it fits or this is what it was, but it'd be really handy to have that and see it. I think it'll really inform us as we go forward.
And the only other thing that I would add from a staff perspective is thank you all for your input and your time on this. It's been a privilege from a staff standpoint, but it's been really a privilege working with all of you on this as well.
Same to you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd say the Olson studio did
Taylor.
a fantastic job, and they were very open to our comments and recommendations, and
Yeah.
just were very well, it was nice working with them.
Anytime you have all of the public that want to comment and 50 stakeholders commenting, it can be a challenge. So putting all that in a concise plan, I wouldn't want to do it. So there you go.
Thank you again for that, Taylor. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
Well,
Of
I'm
course. Thank
guessing
you.
I know which way this will go, but I think we have to have a motion.
Yeah, and I'll add from a housekeeping standpoint too, just close the public hearing unless there's any further
Ah,
comment
thank
from
you.
the public.
Thank you. I would have forgot that. You spend time giving me a cheat sheet and there I go off on my own ad libbing, don't I? Sorry about that. Any other comments from the public? All right, then I will close the public portion of the hearing and I will take a motion for the approval of the Activate Andover Comprehensive Plan.
Mr. Chairperson, I, Gary Israel, make a motion that we adopt a resolution and recommend approval of the Activate Andover Comprehensive Plan 2024 to 2033 to the governing body.
Gary, thank you very much. Do we have a second to that?
Second, oh, sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
I
Hi,
was waiting
David.
for you.
I saw the nod and didn't hear the voice, but that was David Foley with a second.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Taylor, thank you again for this evening and for all the work you've done.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank
Let
you.
me know if
Thanks,
you need
Taylor.
anything else.
I have a question of staff. Is this posted on the website right now?
It's posted on the activateandover.com
It is, okay.
website. Yeah,
This version?
Mhm.
this version, correct.
Okay, good. Because I'm sure people are gonna, 400 pages is a lot to go through. So people just need to know where it is to be able to go through it.
But a few of the color-coded drawings are really handy.
Oh, they're really good.
Oh,
really?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Thank
Go
you.
right to 'em.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's see, we have one more item. Item number 5.5, the 2024 through 2028 Capital Improvement Plan. Lance, good to see you.
Good to see you. So you guys are lucky tonight. You get me.
Yes,
That-
sir.
That magical time of the year that we call budget season. So a lot of the heavy lifting has been done. As you guys know, we adopt an operating budget. Our fiscal year's a 1-year fiscal year. So we've been working. Staff have been working really hard on the development of that. Jenny, who's here, present, hiding in the back to make sure that I don't tell any lies up here, I suppose. But she's been working hard on getting the recommended budget fully put together. We did present to the city council, to the governing body, end of June on our Saturday budget retreat. So we're pretty far into the annual budgeting process. Tonight, we're going to be looking at another financial tool that we use that helps inform, obviously, and is implemented through that annual budget process, and that's the capital improvement plan. The capital improvement plan for the city of Andover is a 5-year plan. So again, the purpose of this document, of this program, and then how we put it together into a plan is to ensure that the financial investments we make into assets matches the strategy, and that the citizens through the elected officials and the planning commission, all the other boards and committees that we have, are being informed by those. So we're thinking strategically over 5 years of where we're investing tens of millions of dollars. The primary reason, other than just being good staff members and presenting this to you for your review, is that it's legally required in the state of Kansas for the Planning Commission to review and approve the capital improvement plan. The reasoning behind that is you guys make land use decisions that involve capital investment, and by that, primarily through infrastructure. So what you guys see most of the time is that that X amount upfront cost, and you guys don't even really see the costs, right? You'll see a subdivision project and you know that there's streets and water lines and sewer lines that need to go in. Those are paid for upfront costs generally, in this example, primarily by a developer, right? But the reason why we classify that as a capital expenditure is because that comes with a lifetime liability from the taxpayers. So we maintain this. So that's another facet or aspect of a capital project that you'll see, is that they always come with an upfront cost, and that's what we're capturing here. But the way that we kind of do the data splicing, which I'll get into, allows us to kind of track what where we're investing in new today. In 10 years, 15 years, 20 years is going to be an investment in maintenance or rehabilitation. So there are all of those things that we look at. Once every 10 years, you get this in the same night that you get your comp plan. That's just the way it happened tonight. And that's the legal trigger, is that if you, a planning commission has adopted, or city council has adopted a comprehensive plan, you got to have a capital improvement plan. It's got to be reviewed by the bodies that update that to make sure they're in conformance. So a lot of the projects that you saw, just talked about with Taylor and Justin, you're going to see on this capital improvement plan, primarily related to transportation. So with that extremely more lengthy introduction than I thought I was going to do, we'll get into what the 2024 to 28 capital improvement plan looks like. So you'll see, and this is kind of a tendency in capital improvement plans, where you'll see a really heavy or front loaded, because we know of some very specific projects we're working through. And then you've got projected or forecasted projects in the future. This one's a little bit more front heavy than we have for some specific reasons, which we'll get into. But you can see over the next 5 years, it is, almost $58 million in capital investment that the city's planning to make today. Now, I should have said this in that lengthy introduction, but the capital improvement plans are living documents. Projects get moved from 27 to 24 because something happens, or they get pushed back from 24 to 27, or Les and Justin come up with a really good idea that no one thought about it today, but tomorrow is awesome and everyone wants to include in there. We play with this thing. So this is a snapshot as of today. So of all, and in your packet, you have a list of all of the projects, kind of the database of projects, and then we splice this data in a number of different ways, just to kind of think about it in various ways. So the first way we look at it is operational category. So every project in our capital plan is assigned an operational category. So by this, out of the $58 million in total projects over the 5 years, you can see our primary points of investment are our wastewater assets and our street assets. And I think it's actually almost around 88% of that 58 million is all street and or wastewater projects, which we can talk about here in a few minutes when we talk about the actual, because most of those are actually budgeted for 24, which is why, again, that front slide, you have so much programmed for 24. So another way we look at this is by the project category. So here we're really looking at like what types of things we're investing in, regardless of department or operational category. So vehicles in the past has been noticeably higher, but we've kind of switched the model in which we do a lot of our fleet vehicle purchasing to more of an equity lease model instead of a capital purchase and owning outright. So that has fluctuated over time. But equipment, facility, and project are really the bulk of those in the facility, where almost $31 million of that is the wastewater treatment plant project we'll talk about. And then projects are generally street projects, things that aren't a piece of equipment, a study, or a vehicle. So again, it's just another way of us kind of assessing where we're doing our investment at. So project type, this is one that I referenced at the beginning. So again, our life cycle stage as a city, without trying not to get too philosophical or macro here, but we're the fastest growing city in the state of Kansas, over 10,000 people. So with that type of stress from growth, you can probably imagine that our enhancement in new categories are going to be higher. Rehab and maintenance and replacement. So those are basically, taking care of an existing asset. At some point, this scale, right, is like we have to constantly watch this. Brand new asset today is going to require quite a bit of investment over its life cycle. Luckily, for streets, water lines, sewer lines, big stuff like that, all the way down to trees, HVAC units on facilities. Your director of Public Works and Utilities has been working on the implementation of an asset management program that I'll actually give him some statistical analysis on this rehab, maintenance, and replacement, to where we can be forecasting those needs well in advance. So we don't want to invest too much and build a bunch of stuff new now because we need to, and not keep an eye on the future on when we're going to have to. I don't want to wait till the last second and then all the new stuff we built in 1 year breaks all at once.
Right.
And then we don't have any money for new stuff, or we have to raise property taxes or issue a lot more debt. So that's a very delicate balance, one that we watch pretty closely. So funding category is another important one. So most people, when they think of city government, think of property tax, sales tax. We have a number of different revenue sources. So as you can see from this, of the approximately 58 million we have in our capital program, only 2 million of that is actually going to be funded with property tax. So I think, the city of Andover does a really good job of doing some of its capital expenditures through other revenue sources. So I'll explain the debt issuance number here in a second. But special funds, for example, 14.8 million of this plan is going to be funded by a special fund. Special funds are gas tax received from the state. They can be fireworks permit fees that we collect to help fund park improvements. Impact fees on new development. So when a new development comes in, we charge, we have policies in place that levy a cost on them for their development to help fund that rehab in the future or maintenance in the future. Non-property tax is essentially what special funds are. Proprietary funds are our utility funds. These operate like a business fund. So you use our wastewater service, we send you a bill for using the wastewater service. You don't use our wastewater service, which is kind of hard to do, then you don't pay for it. The debt issuance is, again, primarily going to be related to the wastewater treatment plant, which we'll talk about. So we do plan on issuing some of that debt in some pretty, what I think are ingenuitive instruments that we've been working with the city council on. But that is an abnormally high number for the city of Andover. But when you do a $31 million project, it's gonna, very few cities can pay cash for that. We can pay cash for about a third of it. We've been saving for quite some time. So I'll get into a few of the projects. So this, again, is just that operational category that we looked at on that first splice of data. This is just for 24, though. So you can see some investment in our emergency dispatch, in some equipment. Parks, you got 1.75, roughly a million. Most of that actually for next year is for investment in the Central Park post-tornado. So the lodge replacement. We did a Central Park master plan over the last few weeks or few months. And we're going to see how much of that we can put into that number or program out in the next 5 years. But I know that 1.75 is we're definitely looking at the lodge replacement in 24 and maybe some reimagining, repurposing of the former lodge site. We got some, I'll skip through police and recreation. They're primarily equipment. Street of that 11 million, the two big ones are the two base grants. So the street projects are Founders Parkway. So Les, correct me on my timing, but hopefully by the end of next year, that backage road from, I'm going blank. What's the furthest east or west extent? Onewood, all the way over to Andover Road should be nearing completion, if not complete. So that'll be an important transportation asset for the city of Andover. We'll also have the other end from Yorktown through the Heritage done by then. That's under construction now. You guys can see that one. And then I'll leave a little quarter of a mile, a little less that segment between Andover Road to the Heritage. That's in this plan. It's just not in 2024. So that's a very important project. And then the other big street investment is Yorktown Parkway, which you heard Taylor talk about during the comp plan, which is this next mile from Central to 13th. And we hope to be in construction beginning of next year and done again, substantially complete by the end of next year. So that'll connect Butler Community College's campus to Central, to Douglas, to the highway. So again, opening up a very important corridor for us in terms of development, both of those. So that's what that $11 million is primarily those two projects. And then wastewater, your Director of Public Works and Utilities is going through that design process now. It's at a point to where we're increasing the capacity of the wastewater we can treat to aid in current development, which is one of the priorities for that investment. The second is just changing regulations from the EPA on the level of treatment we have to provide to that wastewater before we can put it back into the natural system. So we've known Les started this decades ago, probably saving up for this project. So we're in a good position. We're planning on hopefully bidding the construction of that project sometime later next year. So we're in the design phase now. I think we're about 60% designs, engineered designs. Next step, once we get those, will be to do a rate study to make sure that the rates that users are paying is appropriate and sufficient to pay the debt on the debt we're gonna issue. And then also, again, taking a long range view of that. We'll submit those plans to the state for approval, bid it next year, be in construction for a while. But again, a little over 31 million of the 45 million is that project alone. So 3 really big, expensive projects for next year. The 2 transportation ones, and then the wastewater treatment plant, some equipment, some park upgrades out here. And then obviously you've seen the whole 5 year. So I'll pause, actually I'll end and answer any questions that you guys have.
So on the wastewater, it's not replacing what we have, but it's increasing the size of the facility and updating things to meet EPA.
Yeah, it's kind of it's interesting. So I think that's the way it started, was that we were going to enhance it, but it's basically through the design process. It's basically a brand new plant at the old location.
And right now, our wastewater typically goes where?
Like once we're done treating it.
After it's been treated.
So when we treat it, it's deposited into 4 Mile Creek. Is that right? Which then goes.
Well, with the exception of that water that we pump to the Flint Hills Golf Course, which in the heat of the summer months, like a day that it's 102 degrees like today, was virtually our entire effluent stream goes to the golf course.
For their pond.
Interesting.
Sorry, for their ponds.
Goes to the ponds and then to their irrigation system.
So the treated water from the wastewater gets pumped through the, interesting. I didn't
Right.
remember that part.
The ultimate reuse.
And we'll continue to do that in the future,
Yes.
same thing.
Mhm.
So they get our poopy water.
We buy it, don't we? Do they purchase that water?
We do have a contract with Flint Hills to purchase that water.
It's clean.
I know.
I just want to make sure.
It's nearly drinking water standards when
Oh,
it
yeah.
comes out of our plant.
Yeah, I mean, there's communities in Texas that are reusing it into their drinking water system. So
Okay, thank you.
So there would probably need to be a vote, like a bond issue vote sometime next year? Or would that be
For
an
the-
IRB instead of or a revenue bond instead of a GO
that's right.
ad
Yep.
valorem?
Yep.
Okay.
We're still working with our financial advisor. So there's yes, you can use a revenue bond, obviously, because you're pledging the
Yeah.
revenue from that business activity to pay for it. There are some advantages to using general obligation debt, primarily in terms of interest rates.
Sure.
So, but then, debt limits, and credit rates. So we're still working through the exact type of debt issuance. For example, I think we internally did some temporary borrowing from one department to the other. So we're doing some pretty creative ways. Instead of paying a bank interest, we're paying another department interest and helping them out for some other projects. And so we still got a little bit of time refinement to the actual debt instrument, but
So Lance, the 159th, at least the half of it that's maybe ours, I guess. I don't know if the west half gets paid for by Wichita, but that certainly seems extensive, the mile from Kellogg North. Was that on the previous capital plan?
yes, it was.
Okay. I mean, I know it's like in progress, so I'm just curious because that seems really sizable too.
Yeah, I think that project and less.
State money?
Yeah,
A
so
lot.
there's cost share between state and us, but Les probably had that thing on a on a capital plan for who knows how many years.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's why it's not show up here, because that's what we try to, the way that we do budgeting is we allocate all costs in the year the contract is let or awarded. So even if construction continues in another, we'll typically allocate that cost to whatever year a contract was signed.
So has staff reviewed past capital improvement plans to see, we hit 90%, 100%, oops, we only made 40%,
Yeah, there's only one expert in the city of Andover who has ever done that project. Jenny has, I know that. And I know, just speaking extremely anecdotally is that I think it's fair to say that we do most of the projects on our 5-year plans. So
Yeah, I just want it to kind of be, if anybody reads our minutes, wants to know that the city has done its due diligence in the past, and what they're doing now is based on past performance and, attainable results and positive improvements for the city. That it's just not, oh, we need to do these things, but
Right.
this
Yep.
is all planned and we've done it in the past. We've succeeded. We know what we need to do and we're building on that and we're continuing forward.
Yeah, it was actually a really interesting process to go through. What some of our new council members, now almost 4 years ago, asked that very question. And so we went back, and we is mostly me and the mouse in my pocket, which is what Lance was laughing about. But it was pretty tedious, but I think out of around 60 projects, we had done 50 to 55 of them. And the ones that we had decided not to do were because of changes in direction or changes, kind of like you were talking about earlier, priorities change, things shift. And so there were a few decisions that we just weren't going to go after a study or after some project we thought we would when we put out that CIP. But it was an interesting process to go through. And Lance was exactly right. We did complete nearly all of the projects in that 5-year CIP. I think it was 16 to 21 that I looked at.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Gary, a great example of that change in direction was we had a bicycle pedestrian crossing bridge across Highway 54 near Andover Road. That was replaced by the freeway project. We didn't feel it was good use of the taxpayers' money to spend $3.5 million for a bridge that within just a few years would be removed for a freeway project that would include at-grade bicycle pedestrian crossing.
And just kind of as a funny side note, are we ever gonna put the clock tower in?
That probably got moved out.
I know that little circle out there, that's where a clock tower was gonna go, and
Now it's a great place for a Christmas tree.
yeah, and it's a good place for having activities for Greater Andover.
Lance, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Of course.
Justin, you probably need a motion, don't you?
Yeah, a vote to either approve with modifications, or disapprove the 2024 through the 2028 capital improvement plan.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairperson, I'll make a motion, or Gary Israel make a motion to approve the 2024 to 2028 capital improvement plan.
Thank you, Gary. Do we have a second?
Second by Vance Garwood.
Thank you, Vance. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Well, any other items from members or staff for the good of the cause?
Do we have any individuals to fill in for Kristen?
Nothing yet. We have posted applications on the municipal website, and we've had, I think, one application, but that individual is located in the extraterritorial jurisdiction, and I believe Kirsten's role would require within the city limits. So we're still looking, and we will continue to frequently post, but we will keep you updated. If you have anybody in mind, please reach out.
Okay. Well, then I, Eric Peterson, will make a motion that we adjourn this evening's Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals on Tuesday, July 18th, 2023.
And I, Gary Israel, second the motion.
Okay, Gary, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.